Hola chicos. Today you are going to be watching this video and taking notes. So what you need to do right now is split your screen between this video and your OneNote. You should look for the page titled 6.3, Preterite of Regular Verbs, which is under your Lección 7 tab. This video is going to go hand in hand with your notes, so it's super important that you follow along, you take notes. Not only because this goes hand in hand with your notes, but because the preterite is one of the most important grammar points we are going to talk about this year. It's something that's going to be an overlaying theme for grammar for the rest of the year. So it's very important that you follow along and take notes. Before we get started on the preterite, let's really quick recap the present tense that you learned last year in Spanish 1. So last year in Spanish 1, you learned how to conjugate a verb. Like if I give you the verb comer, you know to conjugate it, the first thing you need to do is drop your infinitive ending, and that would be our AR, ER, IR endings. And 2, then you would add the appropriate endings according to your subject. So if I were to give you comer 2, you would write comes. Or if I said comer nosotros, that would be comemos. Or comer yo como. So that's how we conjugate verbs into the present tense. We drop the infinitive ending, AR, ER, IR, and add the appropriate present tense ending. We're going to take this same concept and apply it to a new tense. So this year, Spanish 2 focuses a lot on the past tenses in Spanish. There are actually 2 past tenses, just like there are in English. We have the preterite and we have the imperfect. So we have preterite and imperfect. We are going to be focusing mainly on the preterite this semester. It's something that we will be working with this chapter, next chapter, the chapter after that, and even the chapter after that into January. So it's really important that you are following along and paying attention. There's also the imperfect. We're not going to talk about the imperfect this semester. We will get it in January or February. So going back to the preterite, what exactly is the preterite? Like I said, it's a past tense. It is used to express actions or states that are completed in the past. Single actions and single states that are completed in the past. It translates to, like, we have the verb to dance, either I did dance or I danced. So when conjugating verbs into the preterite, we're going to follow the same concept of dropping the infinitive endings, then adding a new set of endings. So the preterite tense has a completely different set of endings than the present tense. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, the sets of endings that we are going to use and a couple spelling changes and irregularities in the preterite. So going back to bailar, so if I bailar, I drop my AR, and then I'm going to add these endings. These are our regular preterite endings. They are haste, o, amos, and aron. Haste, o, amos, aron. There should be a couple of things that are sticking out to you about these endings. First off, these endings first, the nosotros form is the exact same in the present and the preterite. So we're going to use context to help determine when we're in the preterite versus when we're in the present. There's some keywords we'll talk about a little bit later that require the preterite. And secondly, the yo form and the la usted form have accent marks. So we cannot forget these accents. Oops, I don't know why that disappeared. Remember a couple weeks ago I told you guys that accents are not just little hats that go over letters to be cool and fun. They have a purpose. Watch what happens. So if I give you bailo, what does bailo mean? I dance, present tense. But if we see bailo with an accent, it changes our subject from I to he or she or you, if we're talking usted, and it changes our tense from the present into the past. This accent is super important. If you do not have an accent, say on a test or a quiz, maybe a homework assignment I collect, definitely the super site, it will get marked wrong, and it's not just going to be one little half point, it'll be a full point off. You have to know where these accent marks go on your endings. They are very, very important. So again, our AR verbs, haste, o, amos, ardon. The next set of endings we're going to talk about are regular ER and IR verbs in the preterite. These are actually kind of nice. ER and IR verbs use the same set of endings in the preterite. So they are iste, io, imos, ierdon, again, iste, io, imos, ierdon. And again, we're noticing that the yo form and the la usted form have an accent on them. When I was first learning the preterite, I always got confused, especially down here in the third person. I couldn't ever remember where my accent went, whether it was the I or the O. Eventually, I just remembered it as it had to have two dots over it. The I comes with a dot, so we have to put a dot as in an accent mark over the O. So again, ER, IR verbs, iste, io, imos, ierdon. So if I have comer, and I want to put it to the to form, I'm going to drop my ER ending and add, the preterite to form, I should clarify that, comer into the preterite to form. I'm going to drop my ER ending, find my subject for to, there it is, so it would become comiste. Pretty straightforward. Again, these endings are very important. They are not going to go away, so the sooner you memorize them, the better off you will be. AR verbs, haste, o, amos, ardon. ER IRs, iste, io, imos, ierdon. And you need to memorize these ASAP. Memorize. Okay? They are not going away. The sooner you memorize them, the better off you will be. So that takes care of the regular verbs. There are a couple other things I want to talk to you about in terms of some irregularities. Just a heads up, the preterite has a lot of irregular verbs. The first set of irregularities we're going to talk about aren't technically irregular, they just have a spelling change. Those verbs are the car, gar, sar verbs. So that is what we're going to talk about more or less for the rest of the video, car, gar, sar. They have a spelling change. So I will walk you through that spelling change and how they work right now. We're going to start with cars. Cars. These are verbs that end in car, like buscar from our list of Spanish 1 verbs, which means to look for / to search. Normally, when we conjugate buscar into the preterite, we're just going to start preterite yo form. We go buscar, drop our AR, and we're going to add a. So you'd get bu-say. Huh. Buscar? Busse. Buscar? Busse. Does busse sound like buscar? No, not really. Something you have to keep in mind with the verbs. Spanish verbs are like super stubborn. They have to change so much with verb conjugations that they don't want to change how they're pronounced, because how they're pronounced, how they sound, that's their identity. That's where they get their meaning from. So if we change how they sound, then we're essentially changing what our verb means. Well, not really changing what it means, but our verb gets upset. We'll just leave it at that. Anyways, so we want to keep the original k sound of our verb, that hard K sound. So to keep the original sound of our verb, to keep buscar sounding like buscar, to keep the k sound, we're going to change the C to a Q, U, E with an accent. So we're going to change the C to Q, U, E with an accent. So what would happen in the preterite yo form for buscar, instead of it being busse, nope, this is wrong. It's going to be busque. Notice how that K keeps the k sound of our verb. Practicar would become practique. Sacar becomes sake. Tocar becomes toque. It's important to note that this change is only in the yo form of the preterite. only in the yo form of the preterite. Watch what happens when we conjugate buscar into all of its preterite forms. So buscar, yo form is busqué, tú buscaste, ella, usted buscó, nosotros buscamos, ellos, ustedes buscaron. Okay, only the yo form has that car ending. So car verbs go to K. Next type of verb we're going to talk about are gar verbs. Okay, our gars, these guys here. Gar verbs, like pagar, which means to pay for. Again, if I'm putting it into the predicate yo form, I've got pagar, I drop my AR, and I get pahe. Pagar, pahe. Pagar, pahe. Our verb's mad. Pahe does not sound like pagar. So to keep the g sound of our verb, to keep the original g sound of our verb, that's this guy, we're going to change the G to G-U-E with an accent. For the gar verbs, we change G to G-U-E with an accent. So the preterite yo form of pagar would become pague, jugar, jugue, llegar, llegue. We're going to come back to jugar. It's kind of special. So again, that car-gar star change, this gar change, only in the yo form of the preterite. This change only happens in the yo form of the preterite. Everywhere else, you just keep your G as a G. You don't have to change it to G-U-E with an accent. So car goes to K, gar goes to gay. Let's talk about sar verbs, like almorzar, which means to eat or to have lunch. If I have almorzar, drop my AR, it would just be almorce. Almorzar, almorce, almorzar, almorce. Does almorce sound like almorzar? Trick question. Yes, it does. There's no change in pronunciation here. But for whatever reason, there's a rule in Spanish that says it is not appropriate to have a Z followed by an I or an E. I don't know why. It's just the rule. If you think about what you may have learned in Spanish 1, if you have lápiz, pencil, when you make it plural, it changes to lápices. Pez, fish, changes to peces when you make it plural. Okay, so that Z changes to a C. So for the preterite yo form, we have to change verbs that end in sar. The Z changes to a CE. Zar goes to say. So if we have almorzar, again, it would be almor, say, comen, say, pay, say. Okay, so that takes care of our sar verbs. So to recap what we just talked about, and those sar verbs, again, only happen in the yo form. Only in yo. So that is the first little bit of irregularities that we are going to talk about today. We said car goes to K, gar goes to gay, sar goes to say, and that change only happens in the yo form of the verb. 2 more things we need to talk about. These will be pretty quick. Let's talk about jugar, almorzar, comenzar, empezar. Yes, these are all AR verbs, but what else do they have in common? Especially think about the present tense. What do all 4 of these verbs have in common in the present tense? They are all stem changing verbs. Do you notice that in the preterite here, there's no stem change? There is no stem change in the preterite. In the preterite tense, the stem changes that you learned last year, so E to IE, O to UE, U to UE, E to I, they don't exist in the preterite. Okay, so those stem changes you learned back in Spanish 1 do not exist in the preterite. Last thing we need to talk about, that's reflexive verbs. This will be really, really quick. Let's say I have ducharse. I want to put it to the to form. We're still going to treat it like a reflexive verb. We have to drop the say, move it to the front, change it to te. Then we're just left with duchar. Well, we want to use the preterite, so we would just change our AR to the preterite endings, te duchaste. That concept applies for any tense in Spanish. Anytime you have a reflexive verb, still have to drop that pronoun, move it to the front, conjugate your verb. You'll just have to use the appropriate set of endings depending on what tense you are in. And that's it. That is the regular preterite. So we talked again about our regular preterite endings. E hasta o amos ardon for AR verbs, ER irs, iste io, imos ierdon. Make sure you have accents on the yo form and the la usted form. Like I said, you need to memorize these endings like soon, as soon as possible. Okay. We also talked about cargar star verbs. We said car goes to K, gar goes to gay, sar goes to say, and that change is only in the yo form of the preterite. Remember, there are no stem changers in the preterite as you know them. They do exist. There are preterite stem changers. They just have a different set of rules and a different pattern to follow. We will talk about those in a later chapter, though. What you are doing now, you can go ahead and work on your homework. Your homework is workbook page 64 and 65.